Right, so it's the 11th of February and it's a nice bright sunshiny morning, so I'm going to take the opportunity to go out and do a recce. I'm going to go to a couple of woodlands today. One is next to Harrington Country Park beside Pension Monument in Sunderland, and the other one is at Hoffel College, the woods that's around Hoffel College through Durham. It's my old college that I used to go to, and I'm quite familiar with those woods around there. So I'm going to have a look at both, see what the access is like for, not just for cast and crew, but also for the vehicles, and see if they're suitable for what I need for the external locations. So this is Harrington Country Park, and the bit I'm interested in is this woodland over here. I'm going to go and investigate along this footpath to see if there's an access point on the other side of the woods, because the car park that I've come into and the access into this car park, which is a road along here, has various barriers to stop the traffic getting in, which I imagine is going to be closed during the night. So I've just come to the edge of that car park area which I've just shown you, and there's this entrance or exit into the woods here, which is kind of ideal for what I want for part of the storyline, where Alice and Chris come out of the woods after having run through, and there's a nice pathway here which they could run along. So I've just come a few yards kind of into the woodland from that little exit point. Just looking back the way I've come, and it's pretty much it's got this kind of, you know, this footpath kind of all the way through, which is exceptionally muddy in places, so that's kind of one little problem, but it's nice and clear for, you know, an access for the actors to kind of walk along, run along, for the camera crew to kind of follow behind or in front of them. The only problem is obviously is the friggin' you know, there's lots of mud. So I've just come further into the woods. So you've got this farmhouse in the distance on the hill, which would do for our isolated location. We had a shot of that through the trees. That would establish Alice's house. But the main problem is the access to this particular wooded area, which I still need to find. So I'm going to continue up this track. Okay, so I've reached the end of the woods. Found a little exit point at the other end, which leads out onto this little road here. Top of the road is a barrier which prevents traffic from coming down. So I'm going to have a walk up there and see if there's any parking outside of the barrier, which would mean a little walk kind of down this little road and then into this access point into the woods. And the other problem is, if we were to shoot kind of around this area for dialogue, we're right next to the A19, which is just beyond these trees over here. This is extremely noisy. So at the top of that little road down there, you've got the barrier, which you could see from the bottom. It leads out onto this road, which is, it's got a bridge there across the A19. You can probably see the traffic in the distance. And you come around. There's a road that leads in off the main road up there, which I actually came down before I arrived at the woods and to investigate this particular road. So as you can see, there's no parking restrictions anywhere on this road, apart from immediately outside the gate, because this leads to some kind of power station further down the road. I'm going to go back down through the woods and try and find a decent section where I can kind of do the scene that I want with Alice and Chris coming through the woods. The problem that I had was the path underfoot was kind of really just full of tree branches, and it's all uneven with stones and rocks and things, so that would be quite difficult to get around, especially in the dark. And we've got very few lights with us, so just trying to get back around this barrier without falling over, making a tit of myself. So I'm going to walk back down and see what it's like, because there was some There was various branches through the woods, little paths kind of branching off, so I'm going to try and investigate some of those and find one that's not too far from this access point. So I found this section of the woods. It's quite a wide section of path, quite clear of any overhanging branches, so there's plenty of headroom. Underfoot, it's probably a good section considering the rest of the woods, which is got lots of tree branches and rocks kind of everywhere. So this is a pretty decent area. I mean, I quite like this footpath, so I'm just going to carry further on down this path because I need to find a section. I need to find like an exit point for the characters to emerge from the woods, and I need to find a decent area where they can actually do, there's a small dialogue scene after they've exited the woods, so I need a little area for that as well. So I found this little access or exit point in the woods. There's a gap in the bushes there in the distance there, if you can just see the end of that, the end of this kind of section of cut grass. And it comes out into the park area. Only problem is you've got, like, as you can see, it's very soggy underfoot, as you can see. But I'm hoping that in the April and the spring that it won't be as soggy as this. So this is a potential, I suppose. Yeah, so I'm going to make my way back to the car and then we'll head out to the second location for another recce. So I'm now at Hoffel College, the woods surrounding Hoffel College. This particular section of the woods is called Great High Woods, and as you can see behind me there's a fantastic footpath which is very flat, very even, slightly muddy but it's mostly dry, so there's only tiny little patches here and there. This would be fantastic, so characters need to run along here in the dark and there's just nothing to kind of trip them over, whereas in the other woods there was tree roots and rocks all over the place, where this one is pretty even, pretty level. You've got a straight stretch right away along here, which is fantastic actually, and then it kind of bends around here, and this is the access point in. I mean, there's many access points around these woodlands, I think, but this one was where I came in and it leads back towards where I parked the car. So this is the little area where I parked. This kind of comes out from the woods into this little open section. See, there's a good kind of standage area here for cars. I know there's gates and that here, but late at night no one's going to need access into these fields at night. So I think this is actually a good location, but what I need is the house. Now I'm going to have a look. There's a house here kind of standing in isolation, so I'm going to have a look at that. I don't know if you can see, but there's a house that stands alone. It's got this little drive on here, and it's kind of on the edge of these trees, but it's surrounded by trees all the way up the drive. Not too sure whether anyone actually lives here or not, so I'm going to make inquiries at the college itself, but even if we were in these woods here, we could still get a long shot of the actual house itself, so that's a potential. This is a different section of the woods that I'm in now, which has got like little kind of, not even really a path, it's just a little trail through the woods. Well, it looks fairly decent, but I think the other woods that I was looking at earlier, they were a lot better than this. The paths are wider. There's no really real discernible footpath through this section of woods, but it's just littered with all sorts of debris everywhere, so underfoot would be really difficult. Oh look, someone's been making some stick figures. The Blair Witch is being out. So there's this gateway into another section of the woods, which would be a better option. And as you can see, it's just off the main kind of the road in. This would be a better option for Alice and Chris to exit the woods, and it's just across the way from that other larger woods which I've just been to. So I've just spoken to the estates manager for Hoffel College, and they've basically given me permission to shoot, verbal permission to shoot at the little woodland it's at the side of that isolated house. So I got permission there. The High Woods one, which is the first one I went to, which was the better location, is owned by Durham County Council, so I'd have to approach them to get permission to shoot in there. The house itself, the isolated house that's there, that is privately owned by a guy. I've got his name, so I can maybe give him a knock and say, you know, we're going to be potentially shooting in the woods next to his house very late at night with lights and cameras and stuff, so obviously I would need to give him some kind of warning about that, and maybe ask him if we can actually video his house, not to go into his grounds, but we can shoot it through the trees. I mean, we could probably do that without his permission, but you know, it's just a kind of a courtesy, so we'll probably have to do that. Not too sure about how the scene's going to play out in that particular section of woods, because the paths are uneven. Well, there's actually no quite kind of discernible path through there, so it's going to be a little bit tricky. So I don't know whether to just settle for that location or because I've got permission. I've actually got the director's email address because he was there at the time as well, and he gave kind of verbal permission, but I'm going to email him just so there's that kind of paper trail. Well, not a paper trail, but so just so there's that kind of evidence that I've asked for permission and I've got permission. I'm going to have a wander back up there, and I'm going to have another look at that section of the woods to see if there's a flat level section in there which we could potentially use for the film, because I didn't really have a good look at that while I was in there, because I kind of settled on the other one. So I'm going to go back and have another scout around. Okay, so I've just been at the house, the isolated house next to the woods. There's a car here which wasn't there before. I've knocked on the door, but there doesn't seem to be any answer. So I don't know whether they can't hear me knocking or what, I don't know. So I'm going to have to probably come back at a later date and ask about shooting the house. I'm going to have a little scout into this woods again and see if I can find a decent enough section of the path that we can film on. So I've come back into the woods, and not too far from the actual gate on the road there's a little path that runs through. You can see just kind of underneath the leaf matter, kind of almost in a straight line up towards where that white sign is. There's a long kind of path through here. Lots of room for actors, crew to get through. Lots of headspace, no hanging branches. Looking back towards the road, the path kind of goes down a little hill and off towards the gate just in the distance there. So I think this is quite enough distance for our actors to kind of run along. But they're saying that I need them to play at the beginning of the film. Just going to go further along this path. And yeah, it's quite firm underfoot. There's no roots and rocks to trip you up. It's not muddy or anything, so it's pretty decent actually. And like I say, it's right next to the house that I've just been to, which you can't really see at the moment, but it's just through those trees over yonder. So that's really close by, so if I can get permission from that guy to film his house, that would be great.